Rights to freedom is dead. We're coming to get our check.
Black First brothers and sisters, welcome to the Afro Elite YouTube channel. I am your host, Afro Elite. Now, before we get started, please make sure that you guys are subscribed to the channel by hitting that subscribe button, hitting the notification bell, leaving a thumbs up, and sharing this on your various social media platforms, because all of that helps the reach and the growth of the channel. And for everything that you all do, thank you very much. So what's the saying that when America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu, or something like that? And we're seeing a very similar situation in New York City when it comes to the unemployment rate. Now, we all know that a lot of the unemployment situation, the problems that Black people have to go through, is really due to the system of white supremacy. And employment is one of the 9 areas of people activity. And I cite Neely Fuller Jr. for coming up with the people's activity for that. So we always know that employment has been used and has been weaponized against us. And we understand that it's a racial barrier, it's a racial element to it, because no matter what the crisis is, no matter what the situation is, Black unemployment is always double that of the white unemployment rate. And you can't say, oh, it's just Black people being lazy, because they don't say that when it comes to white unemployment people. Now, we all know that with the pandemic, it's created this big spike in unemployment, especially in major cities like New York City. But the thing is that the spike was the highest, no coincidence, no surprise, but the spike was the highest among Black people in New York, and the spike stays the highest among Black people in New York. And now we're going to look at this article so we can see further information and get the data on it. Why Black workers in NYC are unemployed at critical levels, and what can be done. When his family moved back from Brooklyn from Long Island, Kason Bryant began looking for a retail or restaurant job, leveraging his 2 years experience at BJ's as a deli clerk. Bryant, 21, applied to everything from Bed Bath & Beyond to local restaurants, but for months he couldn't find anything. Quote, "I was getting so frustrated because straight out of high school, I was used to working 40 hours a week," Bryant said. "So that period was hard. I needed to find something to do with my time. I needed to find work for income. It was like a flurry of emotions." Brian strengthened his application with community service jobs and used professional service to edit his resume. 8 months later, Brian completed a technical training program through the Henry Street Settlement, a nonprofit Lower East Side of Manhattan. He found work as a part-time building automation technician, but he still wants full-time work. Brian is one of almost 100,000 Black New Yorkers struggling through the recent and unusual unemployment crisis. A little more than a year ago, as the city's recovery from the pandemic began to accelerate, the Black unemployment rate in the city is still high at 15%. Which, so you guys know, that is a very, very high percentage of unemployment. That's incredibly high. And here's how you know there's a racial element to it, because when unemployment rises due to, pandemics, due to catastrophes and everything like that, why do you think that always hurts Black people the most? If the pandemic, if the natural catastrophe, if inflation, whatever the case, if that affects everybody evenly, why is it that the unemployment for Black people always spikes the highest? Not just spikes the highest, because notice what they said, the pandemic is starting to recover. Pretty much, the pandemic is over now. As of today, the pandemic is over now. So why did it spike the highest and it stays the highest too? It doesn't start recovering until much later, after all these other groups, after all their unemployment starts recovering, and you have to say that there's a racial factor. But let's continue. Today, even as the city nears a complete recovery from the pandemic recession, the number is 12.2% compared with a white worker rate of 1.3%. That is an incredible difference. Okay, that's an incredible. They're saying that statistic is pretty much saying, for every one in New York specifically, because this is just talking about New York, but for every one white unemployed person in New York, there are 12 black unemployed people in New York. That is an incredible disparity in unemployment. All right. And they'll cite these statistics and be like, well, you see, black people just don't work hard. Tell me how, because they never say that about white unemployed. They never say that about any other group of people who are unemployed. They make it seem like there's 0% unemployed people except for black people. They never say that. They will never say that the 1.3 unemployed people in New York, unemployed white people, are lazy. They would never say that. Okay. But they would say that about the black population who are unemployed. But the only reason you can say that there's such a huge disparity in the unemployment rate is because of racism. That's the only logical answer, is racism. Continues to say it is nearly double the Hispanic rate, according to an analysis by economist James Perrott at the New School. Now, they're always saying black and brown, all the struggles that black and brown people have to go through is so bad. Why is it that black unemployment, no matter what the crisis is, no matter what the pandemic is, no matter what the country's going through, no matter the state, why is the black and brown unemployment rate, why is that not on par with each other? Because they always make it seem as if our struggles are on par with each other. They always make it seem like that. But when you actually look at the numbers, our struggles are nowhere near on par with each other. Now, they have it worse than their non-Hispanic white counterparts. Of course, I mean, who can argue that? But why is ours almost double what theirs are? It's not like ours is up by a couple percent. It's almost doubles. That means pretty much what they have is about, around a good six something percent compared to our 12, around that number, So why is ours so much if black and brown, if all of our struggles are equivalent, like how they try to make it seem? Continues to say, meanwhile, the national black jobless rate in May slid to 4.7%, the lowest on record at the narrowest gap with white workers ever. And that's still a big gap. A 4.7, almost a 5% gap in unemployment rate. They're saying that's pretty much the lowest it's ever been. 4.7. That's what they're saying is that's pretty much the closest the black unemployment and the white unemployment has ever gotten to each other. Has ever, and it's a whole. So that means pretty much, all of the time when you look at white unemployment, for no matter what the pandemic is, no matter what the situation, the economy, whether it's doing well, whether it's not, black unemployment is always like 3 or 4 times as high as white unemployment is. The lowest is ever, the closest, it's ever been is 4.7. And that's a pretty fair gap in between. And how can they say this and say America is race blind? How can they look at the numbers? When you look at the numbers, you can't logically say America doesn't have systemic racism. You can't logically say that. They tell us, oh, all we got to do is pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and work hard and go to school and stay out of trouble. So if that's the case, we should be getting the same results. Even the unemployment rate should be somewhere on par. Even if they have more wealth or resources or connections or whatever, that doesn't explain this big of a gap. The gap would still be closer, even if they had the advantage. The only reason why this gap is so big is because America is currently targeting black people. That's the only reason. It continues to say, that momentum is reflected in fast-growing cities like Miami, where black workers are making strong gains. And a lot of black workers are making strong gains because they're cracking down on all of those illegal workers who are working on those construction sites and doing all those, jobs and stuff like that, those labor jobs that they're not supposed to do because they're not legal citizens. So that's why a lot of black workers there are starting to make some gains. Quote, certain parts of the country has been scarred more by recessions than others. Certain industries have a harder time than others, and there are geographically different concentrations, said economist Claudia Sam, who served on the White House Council of Economic Advisors and the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. What you are seeing is the recovery of different strength of a different length in these different parts of the country. Continues to say, after tracking the trend for more than a year, economists and other experts agree on the cause of New York's high unemployment rate, with an increasing emphasis on how outmigration of working age black residents from the city is changing the demographic of who continues to live in New York. While the Adams administration insists its focus on the problem, outside observers are not so sure. And for a fact that Greg Adams, of course, and there's no reason to believe what Adams is talking about, because Adams is going out of his way for a lot of these illegals who are getting flooded to New York. Adams is not caring about black people. Adams is he's breaking the bank. He's making it harder. He's admitting that he's making things harder for black New Yorkers so he can make things more comfortable for these illegals coming into the city. He's admitting that. So, of course, he's not going to care about black unemployment in New York. He's going to start giving the illegals jobs. So he can't do both. So he doesn't care. He's saying that he cares, but he doesn't care. Because to be honest, let's be real. Every time an issue like this pops up where the statistics are out that there's a big problem, the administration is, we're really focusing on the problem and we're looking into it and we're investigating and this is a big concern to me and trust me, we're going to get to the bottom of it. Okay, well, Adams, what do you plan on doing about it? What do you plan on doing about it? Adams, better yet, why don't you explain how there is such a huge disparity between black unemployment and white unemployment? Now, he can't use the pandemic. That's the thing. He can't use the pandemic because he would, in the pandemic time, he would be able to say like, hey, well, the pandemic is slowing everybody up. Everybody's kind of having a hard time when it comes to finding a job. Everybody's having a hard time. But Adams, how can you explain how can he rationally explain how it's almost a 12% difference? How can he explain that? How can he explain that it's almost 12 times the percent of white people? How can he explain the huge racial disparity? And it's not just black and white, black, white, and Hispanic. How can he explain that black people shot the highest and are staying the highest despite the fact that the pandemic is over? How can you explain that, Adams? Right. Quote, I think that there are a lot of initiatives and a lot of efforts spinning around one another and not getting to the root cause, said Melva Miller, chief executive of Association for a Better New York, a civic organization. The source of the disparity began with institutional racism, especially against black men, Miller said. Borough presidents Donovan Richards of Queens and Vanessa Gibson of the Bronx, both of whom are black, echoed that view in an ABNY report earlier this year. It's racism. It's anti-black racism. That's what it is. Okay? Because if race wasn't a part, everybody would be suffering from unemployment equally. But there's no way you can say that there is a huge gap, and there's always been, but there's a huge gap in unemployment when it comes to white and black people, but race doesn't play a part of it. Of course it does. And the thing is that Adams is not going to admit that New York has deep-rooted racism as a problem. He's not going to want to admit that. He's going to try to play, and they're all going to try to do that. He's going to try to play this democratic, well, we don't know if it's about race. It's a all lives matter. It's color. It's class. It's a bunch of stuff. He's not going to say the problem is white supremacy. He's not going to say that. It continues to say, New York City's delay in allowing industries employing a large number of black workers to reopen after COVID shutdowns, including hospitals and retail, also plays a part. And no, I don't think so. I don't think so. Because why is there a huge disparity? Because if it plays a part, it should play a part for all races of people. It shouldn't just play a part for black people. And the thing is that earlier in the article, it said that the pandemic is pretty much over, that they've pretty much recovered from everything from the pandemic. So what hospitals are still closed because of the pandemic? What retail stores are still closed because of the pandemic at this point? I mean, I don't know. I don't live in New York, but if it was, it should still be affecting everybody evenly. Why is it such a disparity between how it's affecting black people, specifically black men? Why would that be? It continues to say, jobs that require face-to-face contact have not recovered to pre-pandemic levels. Really? Okay, well, whatever. According to a study by the New York Federal Reserve, the retail trade is still down 11%, with leisure and hospitality trailing 8% over the same time period. White-collar jobs like business, information, and finance have all seen gains of 2%. The latest wrinkle is the phase out of jobs that grew during the height of COVID. During the pandemic, there were new opportunities as sanitation and cleaning services staffed up and the city implemented a widespread public testing program, said Connie Mendez, Senior Director of Employment Services and Henry State Settlement. Quote, the people that were working in these community-based programs, like COVID testers that you saw outside in the street, were people from the community, Mendez said. Increasing attention is being paid to the flight of black New Yorkers, whose population has declined by 9% over 2 decades, according to the latest census data. It is not the lowest outcome workers or the unemployed who are leaving, but rather middle-class families who don't benefit from the social safety net, but still struggle to make ends meet, according to Zaluma Blair, chair of Public Administration's Department at Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn, who studies the city's changing black population. Quote, you have an apartment, you have rent, or you have a mortgage, you have transportation costs. You have a lot of different bills. So the dollar is not just stretching, said Blair. And for low-income individuals, I wouldn't say they're better off, but I would say that there are opportunities for them due to New York's social safety net programs, she said. Miller of the ABNY sees her long-term neighbors packing up and moving out of West East Queens, known as a bastion of the black middle class. And this is what I'm saying when it comes to gentrification. All these social net programs, these social safety programs, whatever they call it, who do you think is really benefiting from those? Now, let's be honest. Who do you think fought for those? Who do you think fought for those? And then who do you think is benefiting from those? Let's be real. Because I can guarantee you the Hispanics are benefiting from those more than the black people are. I can guarantee you that. Continues to say, quote, there are older black New Yorkers who can sell their homes for a good penny and move elsewhere. There are younger black New Yorkers who went to school in the South and came back and found it wasn't affordable in New York, she said. The contrast with fast-growing areas of the South, such as Miami, could not be more striking. The Florida unemployment rate for black workers is only 4.6%, only twice the overall rate. And the most economists say Miami is likely to be in that range. In contrast to New York, the Miami metro area saw its economic recovery driven by job gains in trade, leisure and hospitality, and transportation industries, all of which reopened much earlier than New York. Okay, so they're pretty much trying to make it seem like, oh, well, things open faster in Florida, things open faster in the South, so that could be a reason. Listen, here's the thing. If trade, leisure, hospitality, transportation, if all those things stay closed in New York, they should have all affected the population in New York evenly, despite the racial demographic. It shouldn't be where if transportation closed, there's this huge gap in black unemployment. You know what I'm saying? And so they're trying to make it seem like, oh, well, New York was hit so heavy with the pandemic and, you know, things were slow to open. That's why things are kind of slow to recovery. Well, if things are slow to recovery, why aren't they just as slow for every racial group in New York? It continues to say, Lean Hernandez, the South Florida Regional Director at the Florida Restaurant and Lodging Association, said, quote, in our industry, there's always certain positions that are in demand that continue to be in demand, and certainly we've had a tremendous surge in new operators domestically, internationally. We've just grown exponentially. While overall wages are lower here, recent wage increases have been large enough to make living in places that are much less costly than New York more attractive. Black men saw a median wage increase of 29% or $4.90 per hour between 2020 and 2022, according to a study done by Florida International University. In New York City, earnings for black workers rose 17% between 2021 and 2022. Quote, hot labor markets tend to lead to higher employment and higher wages for marginalized workers, said Ali Basamati. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Deputy Director of the Roosevelt Institute's Worker Power and Economic Security Program and former economist at Florida International University. The administration of Mayor Eric Adams insists that it recognizes the problem and is working hard to fix it. I don't think so. I don't think so. Of course, he's going to insist that he's doing that, but he's not going to really speak truth to power about what the problem really is. And if you can't diagnose what the problem really is, then you're not going to find a solid solution. Any program that he might implement might be a temporary fix and it might help a couple of people out here or there, but it's not going to be the systemic change that's necessary. It's not, because he's not going to admit the systemic problem that's causing this. It continues to say, quote, the opportunity of the recovery has not been shared equally, and we are taking aggressive action to rebuild an equitable economy and address the high unemployment rate among black New Yorkers, Adams said in a statement to The City. And they put it in all caps because The City is like a publication. So when they say The City, they don't mean the city of New York. They mean The City, the news publication. Okay, because the title is The City. Okay, that's a New York news publication. It continues to say, the mayor attends virtually all the, quote, hiring halls that his administration is holding to try to fix vacant local government positions and where the applications are primarily people of color, a city hall spokesman noted. Well, here's the thing. The unemployment crisis are not affecting people of color. They're affecting black people. Earlier in this very article, they were just talking about the statistics. See, this is what they do. Black people face the worst of the worst. Black people are always the hardest hit. Black people are always the one who have the worst problems. Even if everybody is going through some problem, black people are always going through it times 10, 20 of what everybody else is going through. Black people are always facing double and triple what everybody else is going through. And then when they talk about, oh yeah, well, the government jobs for people of color. Well, why do people of color get the remedy for a problem that black people have to face? It's black people who are always the ones who have to suffer, and everybody else gets the benefit. Everybody else gets the reward. Everybody else gets the cure. That's not right. It continues to say, in addition, the administration points to its goal to expand the summer youth employment program to 100,000 participants, about a third of whom are young black people. A third of whom are young black people. Well, you see, this is this is how we know Eric Adams is not going to solve the problem, because if black people are disproportionately affected by unemployment, if black people are the ones who are facing this crisis way more than anybody else, what are you talking about? I'm going to do a summer youth program. First off, who's saying it's just the youth that are suffering from unemployment? That's number one. And number two, you're talking about a third, not even half. It's not even a most, a third of them are black people. Well, it's not a third of the black people who are facing the unemployment. It's not a third. So what do you see? This is the black people suffer, and then we're gonna come at you with this all lives matter policy. We're gonna come at you with a one size fits all and everybody gets to get in policy, and that's not going to help the racial disparity. That's not going to help the unemployment disparity, because it's race based, and in order to fix a race based problem, you need a race based solution. But he's not coming at this with a race based solution, so he's not going to fix the problem. It continues to say, it also has expanded CUNY's 2X Tech program to community colleges serving mostly minority students to prepare them for opportunities in the tech sector. Still, the numbers are alarming. Quote, the difference between the unemployment rates for black non-Hispanic workers and white non-Hispanic workers is at its widest it has been in this century. All right, that's a big deal, said Perriott of the New School. Eric Adams is not going to fix this problem. He's not going to fix this problem because he does not want to fully diagnose the problem. Now, he's this black mayor. He's a black mayor in a Democratic city, but he's not going to admit the fact that the problem is white supremacy. How are you going to fix a racial problem, a problem that is specifically targeting black people 12 times the amount it's targeting everybody else? 12 times the amount is targeting white people, and twice as much as is targeting the Hispanic population, but you're going to fix it with an all lives matter policy. That's not going to work. And the thing is, just like with affirmative action, black people are going to get pushed to the back of the line of the policy that our suffering was there to fix in the first place. So Eric Adams is not going to fix anything with that type of policy. But family, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What do you guys think about Eric Adams' plan? What do you guys think about the situation in New York? What do you think a solution could be to fix this problem? Let me know that in the comment section below. Also, you can be following me on my various social media pages. The links to both of those are in the description below, but it's Afro Elite on Instagram and the Afro Elite on Twitter. Please don't forget to subscribe on this channel if you guys like this content. Also, please leave a like because that really helps the algorithm. And with that being said, my brothers and sisters, be one salute to every single last one of you all. And of course, you all have a good one.